Hello there, thank you for tuning in for a brand new episode of our SDX Big Interview Series. I'm Dan Loosemore, the CEO of SDX Central and Data Center Dynamics. Delighted to be back in our virtual studio here, joined by Vishal Shukla, the CEO and co-founder at Aviz Networks. Vishal, I was lucky enough to meet you in person at our compute event in New York City a little bit earlier in the year. Thanks ever so much for joining me in the studio today.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to join you here in this virtual event. And yes, it's always a pleasure to meet you and your team.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the support, especially now that SDX Central is part of our platform here at InfoX Media. Regular SDX Central readers will be familiar with the Aviz proposition. I know you've long supported the platform, but for those maybe less familiar, Vishal, maybe you can give a little intro, firstly to your own career journey, because I always think that's an interesting part of this interview series, and secondly to the proposition at Aviz Networks.
Yeah. Personally, I've been a networking engineer from, start of my career and, started as an engineer and then moved into product management, marketing, overlay sales, and pretty much all the different, verticals of a networking industry, being an ASIC company as well as the switch companies. And so I have good understanding of the markets, the players, and how it's evolving and everything. And during this particular journey, we basically saw a pattern in the market on how it's moving forward, how AI and the bandwidth requirement is creating an opportunity and creating a need for something on how the networking should be done differently. And that's where we formed Aviz Network. And the idea was pretty simple: is that the standardization has to be on the operations layer, on a data layer, because the infrastructure itself is changing very fast. Your port speeds and feeds are changing very fast. Your ASIC, the life cycle of ASIC is becoming very fast. GPUs, the computes are changing very fast. The bandwidth requirement are increasing 10x every couple of years. So definitely you needed a new kind of a network, and that's where we formed Aviz Network.
Thanks very much. Yeah, we've our editorial team, Ben and the team here, and Dan, who you all know, have done an awful lot of content recently on the network and the network being robust and sexy again in the age of AI and having almost a hockey stick like demand curve to deal with.
Yeah.
Maybe in your own terms, you can talk us through a little bit what an AI first network actually means and how you're meeting some of the pressures on the rack level infrastructure in the age of AI.
Yeah. So look, I mean, before I get into AI, let's just quickly look at what is happening, in the industry, and it's nothing to do about networking. It's actually the things which are influencing the networking. So look at it in three different dimensions, right? The first one is actually the definition of compute itself is changing, right? I mean, used to be CPUs, but now this is GPU and DPU,
Yeah.
and everything is coming at a very light speed. Every 3 months, you see NVIDIA or AMD bringing something new, right? So the compute for which you need networking, that itself is changing in the DNA level, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is the requirement of bandwidth is also changing at a high speed, right? Think about it in this way that, you know, I think 5 years back, if you will go to Amazon.com or eBay.com, looking at a product to buy, the product description used to be either in text or it will have a very low pixelated picture
Yeah.
for the description of that product, right? Now look at today. You have videos, right? And you have tons of videos, and you have the people who are reviewing the product, they put their own videos, right? And then you have AI on top of it generating more videos, right? So it's basically bandwidth, which basically has gone 10x or 100x in past few years. So for that, you need a new network. I mean, and this has nothing to do with AI, by the way. It's just that more quality content, right? And the third one is actually AI itself, post LLM. I'm not talking about the old AI ops platforms and everything. I'm talking about what the technology which came after 2022 and 23 is actually every vertical is looking for. How do they use the efficiencies of post LLM era?
Yeah.
So these three things are essentially pushing networking to be AI native, AI driven, and that's where you see that hockey curve which you talked about. And it's essentially on two dimensions. From the business side, creating networks for the AI workloads, and then putting AI in networks. And that's what we do in Avis. All our products are essentially aligned with these two dimensions, creating the networks for AI, and then making AI for the existing networks. So this is what we believe in.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Vishal. It's a fascinating time. Firstly, that jump from CPU to GPU, and then I can empathise being in media with your point around the changing bandwidth requirements, particularly as a publisher. It wasn't long ago that we were all editorial based and text based, and now we've got more of these interviews and broadcasts and LinkedIn live streams and live event live streams, and it's video led on video led on video, and it really the bandwidth paradigm leap is staggering, and that's without even pushing stuff out to GPT or private LLMs. So, a great little explanation through what being AI first really means and how you guys are bringing that to life at Avid. I want to talk a little bit. We see a lot of interest in the refresh rate and the need to be flexible that a lot of our enterprise buyers are asking us about at SDX. Maybe you can speak a little bit to some of the trade-offs that you've perhaps avoided by providing vendor-agnostic networking and the flexibility and the longevity that can provide enterprise IT leaders as well.
Yes, certainly. So Dan, if you really look at it, the technologies which has become the enterprise technologies have always been perfected by some of the key players in the industry. And in networking, these are hyperscalers, the top 5 to 7 deployments. They basically, deploy those technologies. They perfect it, and then basically it becomes so repeatable enough that it becomes a recipe for the enterprise. So this vendor agnostic, and multi-vendor deployments and everything is essentially at that stage right now where it has proven its worth, and not only that how it gets into technically deployed, but also from the business point of view. So what really actually had hyperscalers get going on to that, right? So the first thing first, they wanted to embrace the technology at a very fast pace, right? What it means is that if, let's say, the port speeds are going from 10 to 25 gig to 100 gig to 400, 800, they should be able to embrace it very fast, and just rip and replace without thinking about that how it gonna impact the usage, or bring down the cloud or networking and everything. So embracing the technology at a light speed, that was number one reason. Number two was, while you do that, don't spike the budget. Okay, you cannot just say I'm going from 100 gig to 400, now I need 4x the capex budget. That's a no go, right? And the third reason is, while you do everything like that, you cannot tell the application developer that now you have to do it differently because I changed the infrastructure underneath, right? So these were the three challenges with hyperscaler took care of. Number one, embrace the innovation at best at a high speed, light speed rate, right? The second one, don't spike the budget. And the third one, application, it has to be agnostic, and it has to be totally isolated from how people develop the application. Those API should not change, right? So now you see, how can you do that, these three things? The way to do it is that create an operating layer which on the south understands the variability and the speed of change of the infrastructure. It understands different kind of vendors, it understands different kind of network operating system, and maybe if you have Sonic, then you don't need to even go there, right? And in the north side, the API remain always same, right? I mean, that's what the hyperscalers have done, and that's where Avis has taken its inspiration. And the advisor board which Avis has, and all the community work which we are doing, is with that DNA, that we are standardizing the operating layer while embracing the comprehensive and inclusive layer of the hardware, which comes from different vendors. And because you have so many vendors in there, so budget spike is out of question, right? Because procurement people, what they love is to have multiple options so they can get the best option out there, right? And then once you have a standardized layer in community, then you don't have to worry about that you have to change your automation, you have to change your applications, all these kind of things. So essentially what we have done in Av is kind of replicated what the hyperscalers have done, but in a way that is meant for enterprise, meant to be consumed as a solution rather than having 100 people team on how Microsoft, Google, Facebook, these guys do it. Because and there's a good reason why they do it like this, but enterprise don't want to have that big team. That's where Avis comes in. Give them the same experience, same business outcome without spending that much.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And completely understand the point on the rate of refresh and not risk managing those budget priorities. It's also really interesting to hear about the application layer. I think that's a great point. And I've been 8 years mostly on the data center side of digital infrastructure. So I'm trying to get used to the sort of abstraction of the application layer right now. So it's a great point to bear in mind and to give users that flexibility. You talked a little bit about the role of your advisory boards and Sonic infrastructure as well. Maybe you can briefly explain the role of Community Sonic and how that plays in your stack and how Avits looks at that. I think it's a really interesting point of differentiation.
Yeah, so look, I'm gonna talk this thing in two different dimensions. The first one is what we have learned from history, and the second one is that how it has, what is happening in the industry right now. So let's look at the history, right? Uh, we had, Sun microsystem with Sun Solaris. We had Windows. We had IBM mainframes. Those kind of technologies, vertically integrated stack, all application running in their own systems. I think that was 25, 30 years back. Then Linux came in, right? And Linux came in, it just standardized the operating systems. And essentially, at that point, nobody knew open source. So it came at that point of time, right? Red Hat took the charge. They kind of made it, as a B2B kind of a operating system. And then the application economy was born. After 15 years back, it was all about applications which run on Linux. And then after the application economy, today we are in the data economy, right? Data and AI economy. So you see how this curve went. It is standardized on the operating system level layer, and then the application economy was born, and then the data economy was born. That is what absolutely is what is happening in the networking right now. We had a lot of different vertical good solutions. You have Cisco solutions, you have Juniper solution, Arista solution, works perfect, no problem, right? But then when you start talking about standardization and consuming the technology at a light speed, where the compute is changing, bandwidth is increasing, right, and AI is all over the place, you have to have standardization at some place, right? And look from, taking the cue from the history, that standardization has to happen on the operating system level. And actually, the hyperscalers have saw it 8 years back, and they started basically proving this thing. And from the past 8 to 10 years, this particular standardization, exactly like Linux, has been proven by the hyperscalers. That's in production. Actually, you and I are talking, I'm sure that it is hitting Sonic somewhere in some of the cloud, because these clouds are running on Sonic, right? So essentially, that standardization has given birth to companies like ourselves, who basically now are making sure that this standardization is sticky enough and basically gives the experience which is exactly same as those vertical stacks. And there's a gap, right? So we are filling up that gap, not much like a Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but more like giving the same experience as Red Hat, but keeping it community. Because look, this is not 2002, this is 2025. People understand open source now as compared to they used to understand earlier, right? So where the thing is, we want to take it to the same level, is that application economy, and then the data and the AI. And that's where AI in networks comes into the picture. So it's actually following the same thing which compute has followed, with basically a great support from the hyperscalers, that they have proven it. And then you have tier 2 enterprises, as who are our customers, essentially deploying it and proving it that it is ready.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Vishal. Really appreciate the context there. And as you say, I think open source is that much more mature and understood now, with the hyperscalers really taking a lead on that side of things, that the concept speaks for itself. And so interesting, having been in the industry for about 10 years and hearing a lot of digital infrastructure stories through founders and CEOs like yourself, the amount of context that starts at Sun Microsystems. It's a huge sort of bed of innovation back along. It's fascinating. Sort of, if you were to draw a diagram of the people in the industry that have moved or touched Sun Microsystems at some point. It'd be a really interesting picture of luminaries, I think, in the industry. I want to come on and speak to another pain point that's linked to that. With that fast pace of change now and getting ready for an AI age, how does that impact network management? And what about enhanced observability on the network? And what does that look like in practice? How are we risk mitigating there and getting the right information to the right people at the right time?
So thank you, Dan. This is a very important question in today's age. As the enterprises are embracing the change in the infrastructure at light speed, the next disruption is of course in the way they monitor it, the way they absorb it, and the way they manage it. And we have a well thought through, thought process here is in a fact that uh, you know how it is getting disrupted, right? So essentially, if you see today, the way the customers do their observability monitoring and management is a click based operation. So we call it click ops, right? So you basically click on a dashboard, then you basically go to second dashboard, click again, third dashboard, and hopefully you will get the information after clicking, flipping through some dashboards. And sometimes you'll probably not get the information, right? But how many clicks you can do in a second, maybe two or three, but then you need time to do the observation on the dashboard itself. And this kind of thing used to work when you have a vertically integrated, very siloed kind of operations and everything. But in the age of AI, where you have multiple vendors giving their best technology out, this is not practical, right? So the way we are changing it is essentially bringing the LLM in front of it, and of course the companies who's looking at solving this problem, who are after 2023, as the LLM revolution happened, those are the right ways of probably solving it, is to ask the question, and that let the LLM and the AI agent sitting there break down your questions into 10 different, I would say, click ops kind of equivalent, and then get the data from those 10 different dashboard equivalent, collate the data, and then summarize it, and you basically get the answer. So essentially, the way observability and monitoring is changing is that it is essentially becoming more conversational using AI. And you don't have to really go into the dashboards and everything. You can actually ask the question, and the dashboard can come to you, and you can actually create the dashboard on the fly, which is essentially generating a pie chart, graph chart, line chart, or a honeycomb chart, or whatever. And LLMs are good in generating the artifacts. So it's essentially that's what it is.
Yeah, thanks ever so much for being so generous with your time. I love the response and the contextualization. I'm sure our viewers will as well. Always like to wrap up these talks with a little bit of future gazing. Maybe you can give your view on network evolution to come and how Avix is positioned to assist.
Yes. So, I mean, what we like to think is that networking is a very conservative kind of a thing. It's very sticky. Once the network gets deployed, nobody wants to touch it for all good reasons and everything. So, it's not like let's say a security application kind of industry, wherein every year there is something new coming in and customers are using something new. So I would say the base infrastructure layer, the technology will remain same. However, it will keep on refreshing in terms of better bandwidth, better AI protocols and everything. But where it will go towards is that this AI will go up to the stack, right? So standardization on the layer of operating system, that will happen for sure. And that's why we are Sonic first company. We do support other operating system, but we believe that the future is about the standardization of operating system. And then the next layer, where the innovation going to happen, is the standardization of data. So irrespective of what kind of a vendor you are using, what kind of a network endpoint you have, or what kind of a compute endpoint you have, irrespective of that, the network will be standardized in the form of the normalized data, so that you can leverage AI to manage your network, monitor your network, and observe your network. So right now the standardization on the operating system is going on. The future is the standardization on the AI, as well as on the data. And the product set which we have at Aviz Network, like I mentioned, they are in two different dimensions: creating networks for the AI, which is actually standardization on the operating system, and the second dimension is AI for networks. That's essentially standardization of data and AI across your existing networks. So we are positioned to actually, ready for that disruption as it happens in next few years, to essentially create a single AI for diverse network endpoints and diverse vendors who basically are our partners, and essentially giving customers a single AI which can take care of their network. So that's where it is positioned towards, and that's what we are with our product sets going to provide.